Salutations everyone, this is Razor bringing you guys another Overwatch video here today to talk about the most misused character in all of Overwatch. Still, after all these years, it's Zarya. And I can't tell you how tired I am of seeing people play this character so incorrectly, so consistently. When I play Overwatch, which is usually on tank and healer, the majority of the time I feel that I'm doing a better job at my job than the opponents on the enemy team doing the same job. But never do I feel that discrepancy, that gap larger than when I play Zarya. Because people just, for some reason, don't seem to know how to play this character, even after all of these years, and seeing her in pro play, and she's not even that hard to maximize value out of, honestly. But I still see it. So one of the main things with Zarya is her charge rate, right? Obviously, you like comboing with Graviton and supporting your Reinhardt, but one of the main things about Zarya is that charge rate, right? It's a unique thing. It's how she builds up her, her amount of DPS that she can output. And we know from, the GOATS era where it was more optimal to not have a DPS character, that the character that does the most damage in the GOATS comp, your main damage threat, is Zarya. And if you are playing Zarya correctly, she will output more damage than almost any other DPS out there, with the exception of Bastion, right? So it's really frustrating because people don't seem to understand the mechanics of Zarya and how she's supposed to be working when it comes to her charge rate. You'll be playing up against a Zarya, right? And she'll have high charge, and then someone on your team is gonna be like, "Stop feeding the Zarya," or "Who's feeding the Zaryas? Why is this Zarya always high charge?" Who's feeding that Zarya? The short answer, nobody. The long answer, everybody. If Zarya is played correctly, she's going to have high charge. It doesn't matter whom her enemies are or what the team comp is. If Zarya is being played correctly, she is going to have a lot of charge, because that's how the character is supposed to be played. You're supposed to use those bubbles at the right time to maximize the protection of you and your team, as well as getting charged to do more damage. And you do more damage, you get more grabs, and you get more grabs, you get more dubs. That's just how the game works. And if you've seen any pro Zarya play via Overwatch League or some top 500 streamers, you'll see that even against the best DPS players in the world, Zarya still gets high charge. Is it because those DPS players are bad and they're feeding the Zarya charge? No. It's because the Zarya player is playing Zarya correctly. That is just how it is. So if you're playing up against a Zarya that has high charge, that just means you're playing up against, at the very least, a decent Zarya. Not that your team is feeding into them. I know they had a Junkrat here, but we were rolling over this team, and the Reinhardt was taking advantage of me creating the space, especially since we didn't have to fight Streets phase at all ever since I got the first Graviton team kill off. We were just able to pressure them, and they just couldn't contest it throughout all of Streets phase. And if you take a look at my charge rate, my average charge is 83%, and I go 16-0 with Zarya. 83%, that's pretty normal. If you have a Zarya throughout the entirety of a game, especially if it's like payload or 2CP, or King of the Hill, that a little bit of map depending here and there, that your Zarya's average energy on the team that does the best is typically going to be in the 70s or 80s, right? That just means the Zarya was being played correctly. Now, granted, if you're playing with a ball who's just throwing and you're trying to bubble him best that you can to win engagements, and you're team is running, Genji, Sombra or something, and you don't have a main healer and you're just getting rolled every fight, you aren't going to get very high charge. Or maybe your average charge rate is only 38% because the team fights just don't last long enough for you to get charge. That's where Zarya reigns supreme, and why she works so well with the main shield and healers that are applying healing points into mainly your main tank, but also to you as well. But because if a fight can last a long time, then that will benefit you in the long run, because that's going to give you a lot more charge and you a lot more damage and a lot of graviton getting built and fairly quickly. You can build a graviton quite quickly with Zarya once you have that high charge. And one of the great things about Zarya is that she takes advantage of a disorganized enemy team, and she can also take advantage of a disorganized friendly team, because she can apply those bubbles and kind of mitigate the throw potential of their teammates, because she can bubble in the Reinhardt that is doing these stupid crazy charges. Obviously, that's always been the worst thing that a Reinhardt can do, and if I had my druthers, I would unbind the charge button from any friendly Reinhardt, because that always ends up in them throwing, right? I get my grab off here, and we also have window, but they mine us out, so that's a little bit of spacing, damage, and it ends up killing me as I'm trying to navigate my way. But the rest of the team backs up, and we get the res, and I know we're playing with a Sigma here, and I think this was the first week that Reinhardt was not available in the hero pool rotation, because they're running Zarya Ball and we're running Sigma Zarya. Obviously, she pairs best with a Reinhardt, and it always bodes well that Reinhardt is the only main tank in the game, and therefore Zarya is going to be a pretty good pick in a lot of situations. She's not going to be very good on defense because she's not going to be able to build her ult charge very well. Zarya takes advantage of aggression, because she's able to intercept the incoming damage, whether they have a Junkrat or not. I realized that there was a Junkrat in both of these games that I'm highlighting here, and obviously you're going to be able to build up more charge if the enemy team is running, a Junkrat, Ashe, or Hanzo, or whatever, whomever spams a lot of damage that can be intercepted quite willy-nilly. Very much so with Junkrat, because his projectiles are slow, have a pretty big splash radius, and are easy to intercept because they don't detonate immediately, especially if they're just spamming down a choke or something. But a proper Junkrat isn't going to be feeding a ton of ult charge to Zarya, but a proper Zarya isn't going to be low on charge pretty much ever. You're going to have those slow times in between team fights, but there's so many ways that you can use Zarya's bubbles to just give you that guaranteed charge, where it's really not that difficult. Ryan throws a fire strike. That's an easy self bubble. You don't want to use your projected bubble unless your Reinhardt's low or whatever have you. But boom, that's 25-35 free charge right there from a fire strike that you can easily see coming. Junkrat balls, easily see coming. Junkrat martyrdom, easily seen coming. An Ashe dynamite that is thrown on the ground and isn't shot out of the sky. Oh, that's an easy bubble, and it will prevent the explosion from hurting your teammates. Obviously, if anyone on your team gets slept or antied or hooked, that's an easy bubble. You can mitigate most of what makes Roadhog good if you just apply your Zarya projected barriers promptly and at the right times. Because Roadhog, without his hook pick potential, really only has whole hog. He doesn't have much to offer outside of that. And if you take that away from the Roadhog's playbook, you're going to be sitting pretty. And the same thing can go with an Ana, right? If I know Zarya Hog is such an insanely common tank duo, even though it's incredibly stupid because you need a Reinhardt. At the very least, you need a shield. So you'd much rather run a Sigma in that case above any other tank. From that main role. Orisa obviously being really an off tank, and Winston really being at the most in at least the bottom 96% of games an off tank as well, and you can utilize him really well from that role. But look what this enemy team is running. They have a Junkrat, a Mercy, a Ball, Brigitte, and they Baptiste, I think, and a Winston. There's nothing that they can do against me, a Zarya. You know, if their Symmetra gets really high charge, there's nothing I can do about that, and she can feed off of my bubble. And we aren't running, you know, amazing DPS characters. We got Sombra and Widow, two of the lowest damage characters in the entire game. But there should be no reason that my Sigma ever dies if I'm alive, right? Because they don't have enough burst damage, and we have a Mercy. What are they going to do against that? There's nothing that this enemy team could do against a Mercy. If Winston jumps in and dives in on her and has a really good, you know, bubble of his own, I bubble the Mercy and she Guardian Angels her way out of there, just like right here. So there's really nothing that this enemy team can do. And so many times whenever I'm not, you know, tank, or, you know, I'm not the off tank, right, I'm playing Reinhardt or a healer, I've seen the Zaryas on my team completely throw away their projected bubbles. They're just using them off of cooldown, as if that's how that she should be used, as if that's how to get maximum charge out of her. Zarya is going to do more damage than any DPS out there if she's being played correctly, and you can punish a hacked Ball or a Mercy that has no one to run to, or really anything. It doesn't matter that, you know, this Symmetra has a little bit of charge, or that this Brig has a shield. That shield is tiny as hell. It only has 200 health, and a half charge Zarya is enough to do what she should be doing in most situations. You don't even need full charge. And people throwing away their bubbles is just, it's ludicrous to me. It's not even that hard. Another thing that I'm telling you about how to play Zarya properly is difficult to do. I'm not a good Zarya because I'm a tracking god and because I get amazing gravitons time after time. It's just because I'm using my bubble management somewhat correctly. I'm not even, you know, maximizing this ish. So what the biggest mistake that people use with Zarya, why they can't get the value out of her, and why they think a Zarya at high charge means someone on their team is doing something wrong, is because whenever they play Zarya, they don't apply her bubbles properly. Unless you see a fire strike coming in, or a bunch of free Junkrat bombs being lobbed in through a choke, you don't use that projected barrier to take the initial poke damage. Zarya has half of her health as shields. She can take a hit and not have to worry about getting any sort of healing. The trick to using both of your personal bubble as well as the projected bubble is waiting until the damage is already coming in. That's how Zarya gets high charge even at the highest rates of play, is because you don't wait until your Reinhardt gets through the choke and then bubble him. You wait till he's already taken damage. You're waiting until the enemy players have already invested in their cooldowns and their button presses and their key presses to send that damage towards Rein before you start bubbling him. And then they have to make another decision to stop applying that damage if they want to stop you as the Zarya player from getting that charge. That's why when you see a Zarya player do what they're doing correctly, you always hear the boom, 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 because they are gaining charge the first frame that they apply that projected barrier, because that teammate is already taking damage. That's what you use the projected barrier for. You use it for people that are in trouble already, that have been hooked, that have been hacked or antied or slept or dove on by the Winston. Characters that already have incoming damage. You can't stop a Widow from one-shot headshotting your squishies with a bubble, but you can stop them from being Tesla cannons down. You can stop them from being hook one-shot in the head, meleeed. You can stop them from being, you know, triple tapped by, you know, Junkrat damage, or, you know, Pharah damage, or getting that final blow from the Genji or the Hanzo or the McCree or whatever character. Zarya is also fantastic against Mei because she can win that 1v1 just by using her own personal barrier at the right time. She's going to have the distance against the Mei initially. Once that distance is closed, you already take some damage, get her to invest the ammo as well as the decision to try to use the freeze ray on you. Then you apply the personal bubble. You're gaining charge. You're either forcing her into ice block, or she's going to be taking a ton of damage, whether she's choosing not to ice block or she has it off of cooldown. And when she does has ice block ready and she uses it, then you use that time to, get back with your team or to back up on that engagement to once again regain the neutral, or she doesn't have ice block and you win that fight, right? These are the type of things that all Zaryas should be doing. If you have a Mercy on your team, there's almost no excuse that she can't get that res off every single time, because you have that projected barrier for her. When a Mercy is always able to do Mercy things, she becomes the most unstoppable character in the entire game, because she only does healing. So the Mercy player isn't going to be wasting their time doing useless shit like doing damage. And they're going to be able to get that res off, every 30 seconds, provided that both of you are alive in order to do that. And if Mercy is getting those free reses every 30 seconds, 40 seconds, then you're winning that team fight just based off of numbers advantage that you're always going to have, because the investment that they take in order to kill that first target and not stopping the Mercy from getting that res. And once you have already built up that high charge, you are only using those bubbles for emergency purposes. You are outside of like the end of fights where you're just looking to not lose that charge on the last struggler that's left, or the last person that is just trying to fend for themselves and build some ult charge. That's when you use your bubble. Otherwise, once you already have that high charge, you just use your projected barrier to save someone in danger or to set something up. You bubble that blossoming Reaper of yours. You bubble that Genji so he doesn't get flashbanged immediately. You bubble your Ryan as he stupidly charges into Leroy Jenkins land, right? Zarya played correctly is not difficult, and she gets a ton of value. I've had games where I'm Ana and the enemy team is playing something dumb like Ryan Hog or Zarya Hog, and I can't beat them because their Zarya keeps bubbling that Hog at the perfect time. So even if I do sleep and or anti him, he gets bubbled, and the only tool that my team had against stopping him, because our DPS are playing something dumb or they aren't focusing down on the healers, right, is being stopped because their Zarya simply just had her projected bubble ready for the Roadhog. And obviously that was the case here. Ryan was out of rotation, otherwise I would have played Ryan, obviously, because that's the best strategy to win just by simple Overwatch math. But so many people play Zarya incorrectly that they just don't get her charge up and allow her to do what she should be doing. If your Zarya isn't getting high charge, and if 90% of her kills aren't high energy kills, then you're just not playing Zarya correctly, or you're just on a garbage team, and in that case you should have changed your pick anyway, because Zarya is not going to be able to do much on her own. But when she has that other tank to play with and even gets a little bit of healing on either you or that other tank, Zarya is going to absolutely dominate, and you're going to get that high average energy once you're not in downtimes, and most of your kills are going to be high energy kills, as good Zarya play should have. So that's just a little pet peeve of mine, that people keep playing Zarya incorrectly. If all these divas defense matrixing your Zarya beam and Genji's trying to reflect your Zarya beam, it's hilarious, and it keeps happening. And that's because people aren't used to playing up against good Zaryas. And while it's at times great for me because people don't know how to deal with me once, I'm in that position to play Zarya promptly and correctly, it's still frustrating when I have to have a teammate Zarya struggle at playing the character even somewhat correctly.